Are you tired of spending too much of your hard-earned money at the supermarket? Are you dreaming of farm fresh eggs, homegrown veggies, and homemade everything? Well, welcome to Ditch the Store, where we break free from supermarket dependence and take back control of our food and household essentials. I'm CJ, and I'm here to show you that life is too short for store-bought eggs. So let's get started. G'day everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ditch the Store. CJ on her own here today. The handy helper is on night shifts. Gotta love that when you're a shift worker. For all of our shift working friends out there, I've been there, done that. I did I'm in my 26th year of doing shift work, and I have had gaps out where I haven't done shift work, but I'm back on shift work now. Luckily, my shift work is what they call gentlemen's shifts. So I am working day shifts and afternoon shifts and not night shifts. But he doesn't get them very often. He gets them probably about once every 8 to 10 weeks. He'll get a night shift block and he's on it at the moment. So I'm trying to be quiet because he is asleep in the house at the moment. Anyway, episode 158 this week, and we are talking about homesteading Easters, or Easter on your homestead. And I did start including at the beginning of the year more things about seasonal celebrations that have occurred. And it's hard for us here in the Southern Hemisphere because we, even though we try and follow that cyclical seasonal pattern, for us it's polar opposite to the Northern Hemisphere, where most of these traditions started. And certainly, the great southern land, Australia, was inhabited by our Indigenous people who didn't celebrate those particular cultural events. I'm sure they had their own cultural events, but given that Australia was made up of tribes, like hundreds of tribes that didn't necessarily interconnect, I don't think there was any organised I don't want to say religious, because I don't think of these seasonal cycles as religious necessarily, but more nature-based. I don't think they celebrated those so much as a whole, as a collective, but individually certain tribes probably had certain cyclical or seasonal events that they celebrated, as far as springtime and, being more produce being available, and wintertime being more of a time where you had to, cope with what you had at hand. Anyway, Easter didn't start with chocolate eggs. I don't think that's a shock to anybody. I think most people are aware that the whole chocolate egg thing is basically a commercialised event to try and get us to buy chocolate. And I'm all for that. I love a bit of chocolate. I'm particularly partial to dark chocolate. My kids know. They went looking for a piece of chocolate for me the other day, and they were arguing over the fact that they could only get milk chocolate and not dark chocolate, and they wanted dark chocolate because they knew that that's what I would like. Anyway, Easter makes a lot more sense when you look at it as a seasonal celebration rather than the commercial let's buy chocolate eggs kind of celebration that it is now. But most of us grew up with the supermarket version: foil wrapped eggs, hot cross buns, which we joke here in Australia that hot cross buns come on sale usually about 2 days after New Year's. It's kind of a weird thing where, just as the last celebration finishes, the next celebration stuff is already out on the shelves. And for most of us in Westernised countries, that would be also a long weekend over the Easter period. So Good Friday here in Australia is considered to be the most important public holiday outside of Christmas Day. And that means that nothing is open. Certainly I can remember a time when you couldn't buy alcohol anywhere on Good Friday. It was the same on Christmas Day. We used to have it wasn't a prohibition, but it was just that no shops were allowed to open on Easter Friday. Now there's been some changes to those retail laws, and shops are certainly open on Good Friday, but the vast majority are still closed. And as such, as a police officer, Thursday nights in our main nightclub area in Canberra used to go crazy. It was like everybody the idea that they couldn't drink Friday night and couldn't go out to a nightclub Friday night meant they had to go twice as hard on a Thursday night, which always kind of did my head in a little bit. It's like, it's one day. I think you'll survive. But yeah, Thursday nights before Easter always used to be a real nightmare at the nightclubs. It'd just be people going well over the top on what they needed. But at the end of the day, when you strip it back, Easter is more about cycles, and it's about seasonal cycles. Now, like I said, for us here in the Southern Hemisphere, it's a bit different. In the Northern Hemisphere, Easter is spring. It's when everything is starting to flourish again. The snow is melting, the weather is warming up, the days are getting longer. So for Northern Hemisphere people, Easter, really in that full sense of the word, is all about new growth, new birth, new life. For us here in Australia, it's actually autumn. So things are wrapping up. We're putting root vegetables into the ground. Animals, we're drying up the goats at the moment from milking because we're looking to do AI to get them back pregnant again. But it is wind down time. The days are getting darker. We're getting home now and it's dark of a night time. When I would be getting up milking the goats, it is pitch black, which I'm kind of only milking every 3 days at the moment because we're trying to really wean them down. But it's pretty hectic as far as the weather goes, and it's only going to get worse. Here where we live in southern New South Wales, our days get very, very short. I joke this weekend is the start of daylight saving, which is the bugbear of my existence. Daylight saving is such a waste of time. It's like taking, I read something, it was an old Native American saying, which I'm sure it wasn't a Native American saying, but I'll attribute it to them because it seems to make a lot of sense. You cut an inch off the end of one blanket and stitch it onto the end of the same blanket, and you think you've got a longer day. Or a longer blanket, I should say. It's nuts. Like, daylight saving serves no purpose other than to make it lighter in the morning and darker more at night. Like, the animals don't care. They still want to get milked and fed at the same time. But that's what we have to do in Australia. We go through that daylight saving cycle, at least until I retire and move to Queensland. And when I move to Queensland, yay, Queensland is the one, I think, one of 2 states in Australia that does not have daylight saving, which is awesome. I can't wait because I really don't like daylight saving. But it is, at the end of the day, whether you're Northern Hemisphere or Southern Hemisphere, Easter is about change and renewal and a shift in the seasons and a shift in the nature around you. And so that's why homesteading, it really does impact homesteading in that way, that it is like a line in the sand where everything changes. I did want to talk about just briefly what was the start of Easter, because it was a bit interesting. People think of it as a Christian celebration, that it has to do with biblical timeframes and biblical dates and events. But it was actually an ancient seasonal festival. And that festival is linked to the spring equinox, which is the time where we start travelling into that longer day rather than the shorter, the same length kind of day and night. So we have longer days and shorter nights. And it was designed around a celebration of fertility, new life, and a return to warmth. And a couple of symbols that come out of our modern Easter come from those kind of celebrations. And one is eggs, which is, let's face it, eggs, in every sense of the word, eggs is one of the oldest symbols of new life, whether we're talking about an egg that's produced by a human female, or whether we're talking about an egg from an animal, or an egg as in an ovum. Egg is considered to be a symbol of new life and rebirth. And the other one is rabbits. And warning if you've got kids in the car, let's face it, rabbits are seen as the ultimate reproduction specialists. Breed like rabbits, the saying goes, and they do. Rabbits, I think, I don't know the exact time frames because I don't breed rabbits, but I think it's around 6 to 8 weeks and they're back pregnant and popping out babies again. So exponentially, they breed. When they breed a lot. So they were always seen as a symbol of fertility too, because of their ability to reproduce so quickly. Now, later on, Christianity spread, and Easter became a celebration of the resurrection of Jesus. And that was, I think, partially, and there'll be arguments about it. So if I'm offending you in your Christian beliefs, I'm sorry. But there is argument around it that the Christians of olden days took on that pagan celebration of spring equinox and tried to rewrap it into their own in order to bring on the pagans into a more Christian religion. If that offends, yeah, well, bad luck if it offends. It's this. I studied history and I love history. I'm a bit of a history nerd when it comes to that kind of thing, and that's what the history books tell us, is that they wrapped up that Easter celebration into a Christian celebration to help people turn from paganism to Christianism. That's not even a word. To Christianity. And it carries the same kind of thread, though, with Christian religions, and that is new life and renewal. It's just expressed differently. So, as far as Easter goes, it is seasonal cycles. There is a spiritual meaning behind it, whether you are Christian or pagan or whether something in between. But the modern tradition somewhere got mixed up. Somewhere along the way, chocolate got involved. But, I mean, let's face it, who doesn't like chocolate? So, you know, it's not the end of the world that chocolate got involved. But what Easter means on the homestead, and this is the really interesting bit, is if you're living on land and living off the land, whether it is spring equinox or autumn equinox for you, it still means a cyclical change. And that cyclical change means that you're moving into a different season of growth for animals, for plants, for the soil, for the light and sun that you're getting. Everything has changed. Now, in Australia, so Southern Hemisphere, gardens are slowing down. This is a good time to pull out old things that aren't growing anymore and start getting the soil to get healthy again and put some mulch and some compost into it. Summer crops are usually finishing up, so you're doing your last of your harvesting and hopefully preserving anything that you aren't eating straight away. And storing anything. So anything that you might need to store for over the winter months, that's a great time to be looking at that. And it's a natural moment to pause and kind of have a look at what you did well through the summer season that you've just finished. I think we don't kind of pat ourselves enough on the back. Like in Australia, we are so, anti-tall poppies. Anybody that does well, if they pat themselves on the back, they're seen like a wanker. Everybody goes, oh God, listen to them carry on about themselves and how good they are. But realistically, if you had a cracker year with your garden, and I've really had plans for this year for my garden before the broken leg, and it didn't happen. I'm in the process. I've just ordered some garlic bulbs, so we're going to get some garlic in. We're going to get some potatoes in. I'm going to get some pumpkin growing out there. They're things that I literally can get them in the ground and kind of walk away from them to a degree. It means that I can do it with a broken leg, thank God. But if you got stuff done in summer, pat yourself on the back, post photos on social media, tell people how good you did. We Australians really need to stop being this culture of, oh my God, why are you bragging about what you did, when in actual fact you should brag about what you did. If you managed to get your garden to the point where you didn't have to buy any tomatoes, or you had so much corn that you were able to freeze it or can it, or your beans in a can, or you've sold produce to somebody else and swapped it out for something else, you should pat yourself on the back for it. I think you deserved it. In the Northern Hemisphere, for my Northern Hemisphere listeners, congratulations. The soil should be warming up. The snow, if you live in a snow area, should be defrosting. You should be starting to get some first plantings going. Now, if you are like me in an area where even we don't get snow here so much, we got snow about 100 k's away from where we live. We got snow this week, but it's up in the hills, not where we are. Now, if you are in a really, really cold climate, you might want to start your seedlings on a veranda, in a greenhouse, somewhere like that, before you put them out in the ground. Because if it's anything like what we get here, in spring we get a false summer or false spring, where it kind of launches into this beautiful warm weather and then all of a sudden we'll get a snap cold change again. And if you've already put your seedlings out, you can lose them. So it's probably a good idea if you are starting seedlings to keep them in a greenhouse just until you get past that last little kind of cold snap, and then you can get them out. Oh, excuse me. It's also the time for animal breeding. Now, when I say animal breeding, your breeding probably should have been done already. It's the time for animal birthing. So a lot of my friends that I follow over in the States with goats are prepping now for goat babies to arrive. So there should be lots of photos of baby kids bouncing all over the internet shortly. Cows can go at any time, but spring is a good time for them to go. Here in Australia, all of the lambs are born early. They're born into winter months, and I'm not quite sure of the science behind it, but an old sheep farmer told me, excuse me, oh, can't stop yawning. Old sheep farmer told me that they lamb during the colder months because it kind of forces the lambs to grow wool and put on fat pretty quick. I don't know the truth behind that, but if somebody else does know the truth behind that, reach out and let me know. Definitely in Australia, the lambing season is done and dusted in the colder months, so it won't be in spring, it would be in winter. So here right now, we would have ewes out there that are pregnant, and they're probably going to drop their lambs around July or August, right smack in the middle of the coldest period. And again, I don't know the science behind that. I'm not a sheep farmer. That's the one animal that I do struggle with. But it seems to be that everybody's lambs go at the same time. So we're at different ends of the cycle. And depending on where you are, depends on where you're at with Easter celebrations and what kinds of things you're going to be looking forward to. So I kind of envy my friends in the Northern Hemisphere that Easter really is for them the start of spring and the start of like warming weather and getting plants in and animals being born and things like that. For us, it's just the polar opposite. But sit down maybe and write out a list of what you've got planned. If you're heading into that spring, write down what you've got planned for this year. And if you are coming through to autumn in the Southern Hemisphere, sit down and work out what went well in summer and what you're going to do again next spring. I really like winter and autumn being a time where you can kind of do a lot of preparation and planning. What worked for the season is a good one. What didn't work, it's okay to go, oh, that was shit, I'm not doing that again. Like us with the great eggplant experiment of gunning, where we used to live, and we grew eggplants that nobody wanted to eat. Or capsicums, which grew okay. I thought I would really struggle growing them, but I grew them okay. But then the kids kind of piped up and said, we don't mind cooked capsicum in a Mexican chili kind of dish, but we actually don't like eating capsicum raw or anything like that. What you're proud of, like I said, pat yourself on the back. There's no need to be shy about it. You really should put your hand up and say, I did well this year. And what you want to do differently. So if there's something that you might have had a garden bed that just didn't get enough sun, things didn't grow well, maybe you hadn't fertilised the soil enough with compost or other things prior to planting out, plan for that this year so that you can get ready and get it done without any issues. And you could be in the same boat as me where, I had a catastrophic injury at the end of last year. Coming into autumn, I am just grateful that I am walking around on crutches and able to drive. I've had a little bit of a setback with my leg. I am now classified as non-union with my bone, which is adding some complications, and I have to go and see a specialist next week to see where that leads. Fingers crossed that we'll come up with a solution for how to get the bone to heal. But I am walking around on crutches and weight bearing. I'm back at work full time, and we've got our new car, which has made it really easy for me to get in and out of and drive and everything. Sometimes you just got to say you kept the chickens alive and the veggie patch produced one thing, and pat yourself on the back for that. And that's where I'm at. I'm not beating myself up about the fact that I had to buy soap powder while I was in and out of hospital. And, milking goats were literally the only thing that I kept going through through summer. Everything else kind of went by the wayside because I was just in and out of hospital too much and it was just too hard, especially with going back to work full time. So, some practical homestead Easter ideas. Oh, I have to shift. I have really sore legs at the moment because I haven't been moving as much, and I think my poor old hammies are struggling. I'm also on so much medication, and some of the medication can impact your muscles. So, I'm really struggling a bit at the moment. So, excuse me shifting around in my seat. Okay, practical homestead Easter ideas. Want to bring it back to what's practical. Use your own eggs. You can, and I've never done this, but the blow-on eggs where you blow the egg out of it and dip it in colour to make decorations and things like that, I always think that's a lovely thing to do. But also to make your own eggs, like make your own chocolate eggs, like you can buy the little trays of frames and just melt dark cooking chocolate. Costco sell it in like a 1.7 kilo bag, so great way to buy it. But dyeing your own eggs, that's a good one. Gifting cartons of eggs instead of chocolates. If you've got excess eggs, go to your relatives and go, oh, look, I'm giving you eggs for Easter. Real eggs, genuine eggs that you can eat that aren't chocolate and don't have sugar in them. And then obviously use all your excess eggs for baking and preserving. And I think a lot of people, like even I'm not religious, but the weird bit is for me, Good Friday, I always eat fish. And it's because I spent a long time living, I've been married and divorced before twice. And my first ex-husband, his family were Roman Catholic. And for a long time, all I ate on Good Friday was fish because that was what I was used to. And I just got into the habit of it. And I like fish, so to me, it was a no-brainer. But Easter's a really good time to kind of sit down and make your own things. Cooking from scratch was the next thing I had on the list, which, why not have a go at making your own hot cross buns? MJ at the moment is in love with the apple and cinnamon hot cross buns, and she's been buying those and just taking one as a snack, like a nice snack for her to take to school. Because for my Northern Hemisphere friends in Australia, the schools don't provide food for kids. They have to pack their own lunch and take their own lunch with them. And she's trying to be good. She's trying not to eat crap. So she takes really healthy food with her, lots of fruit and veg and meat and cheese and things like that. But she has been taking a hot cross bun. But honestly, it wouldn't be that hard to make. And I'll have to try and dig up and post up a sourdough hot cross bun recipe because that would probably be better for people like me who don't like eating bread all the time. Make a proper roast or go all out and cook a big chunk of salmon if you can get a hold of it. Like if you live in an area where salmon is available, and obviously, wild caught is the best. But if you can only get farmed, well, you're still eating better than most people. Check out what's in season here in Australia because we're in that autumn period where we're really it's apples are we're kind of coming out the other side of our apple season. But most of our fruits and veggies are done, and unfortunately that means most of our things are coming in from other places. We do have pumpkins and things like that, like a lot of the root vegetables are still available, but there's not a lot seasonally that's kind of there for us. So you might, if you're in Australia, you might have to dig into your preserved food that you've preserved or stored previously. Got tongue-tied there. I guess the main thing is sit down and relax and have a little bit of time out and pat yourself on the back and say, we made it through this year. This is a little bit of rest time before we go into winter and start planning. Keep the traditions, just tweak them was another thing I had on the list. Obviously, everybody loves having chocolate Easter eggs, unless you really, really hate chocolate, in which case, not sure we should be friends. But maybe just tweak it a little bit in that you don't have to go all out and go commercial and buy like 100 eggs and, the eggs filled with Smarties and caramello eggs and all that kind of crap. With my kids, I now buy them a block of chocolate because it's actually more value for money. They get more chocolate for a lot less money. But we also have a thing where they're godmother buys them pajamas every year for Easter. She's done it since they were babies. But Peter Alexander pajamas, which for anybody that doesn't know that brand, go look up Peter Alexander pajamas. They make the best pajamas. They are so expensive. And every year she buys them a new pair of pajamas. It's just insane. But they look forward to their Peter Alexander pajamas that they get off their auntie. So maybe, give a gift, a book or a pair of pajamas or something like that, especially if you're in the Southern Hemisphere and you're heading into that winter. A nice warm pair of jammies or some slippers. In the Northern Hemisphere, it might be a case that you buy a pair of swimmers and a beach towel, because you're heading into the summer months. But getting kids to do a backyard egg hunt, if you've got little kids, get them to do a little backyard egg hunt. Just make it smaller eggs. Make it little eggs that you can afford. Maybe make it little gifts that they have to find that you leave around the backyard instead of actual chocolate. And then obviously having a sit-down dinner with family. We have fallen off the bandwagon of sitting at the dining room table, and since I broke my leg, and we really need to shift back to it. It was always such a good time for us as a family to sit at the table, eat dinner together, and actually have a conversation about how our days had gone. And I think, as you graduate to the lounge room to eat, and then the television goes on while you're eating and things like that, you just lose some of that connection. MJ and OJ, MJ's just got her first job. OJ's started applying for jobs. So they're both working now. So we have a lot more to talk about as far as what's going on in their day. And don't stress if it's not Pinterest perfect. I always say Insta perfect or Pinterest perfect. A lot of people make it look like these smorgasbord tables that they set up, with all this food and produce and celebrations. It doesn't have to be like that. It could just be nice food. And, if you've got good plates, we've got good plates in there that we never use. I always say, I'm going to get the good plates out, stuff it. Like, you only live once, use the good plates. Use the good plates, use the good cutlery, get the nice glassware out to have a glass of wine. Now, seasonal feast. Build the meal around what you've got. So for us here in the Southern Hemisphere, pumpkins, fruit, vegetable, preserved goods are all things that you will have free to hand. As I said, apples are still, we're still getting really good quality apples at the moment, so apples are another good one. I think the last of the mangoes has kind of gone off. Here in the southern New South Wales areas, we get a lot of roadside stall sellers who sell mangoes really cheap on the side of the road. But I think I haven't seen any for a couple of, probably 2 weeks now. So mind you, that could be because fuel prices have gone through the roof and we're all dying to try and fuel up our cars. But in the Northern Hemisphere, you'll start having access to fresh greens and herbs and the early produce that's coming through out of people's gardens. And like I said, if you like fish, get yourself a good piece of salmon. It's okay to buy the expensive piece of fish and have it. You don't do it every week. Imagine if you lived in somewhere like Alaska where you could just go out and catch a salmon. Oh, that would be my dream. I always wanted to go to Alaska or Canada, and that, to me, that would be the bucket list golden mark, would be to go out somewhere and fish and catch my own salmon and then take it back and cook it and eat it. I couldn't think of anything better. But even if you only contribute a couple of things onto your table from your own efforts, then that's okay. It's still a start. You don't have to be this full-blown homesteader that every single thing that comes onto your table is out of your garden. That's just not realistic. Unless you've been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years, it is not realistic to do that. So don't panic. Keep it simple. I've got on my list. I've got a little list in front of me of the things that I want to talk about. And I think this is really important, and especially for people like me at the moment who are suffering. And, I walk around on crutches. I can barely carry anything. I have to get kids to move things for me. I can walk with one crutch now around the house, so I can carry a cup of tea or coffee to my table but sometimes you do need to take a step back and go, I can't do it all. And that's okay. You don't need to have fancy decorations. You do not need to have complicated meals. I mean, cooking a piece of salmon is as simple as having portions of salmon and putting them in a fry pan and cooking them. I love just straight up fried salmon, like with the really crispy edge on it, but still pink in the middle. I think that's the bomb way to have it. But have that and have a side salad or a side of veggies. That's all you need to have with it. I don't want you to stress about just another thing that you have to kind of get right and get perfect, because that just is a waste of your time and it'll drain you when you should be really relaxing. I think it's more about with Easter, and it doesn't matter whether you're religious or not. If you are religious, then, obviously you'll have church services that you want to go to, but being present with your family. And that being said, I'm working Good Friday, I'm working afternoon shift, but the handy helper's coming off night shift Friday morning. So that means that he'll pick up the kids. They'll be at their dad's, and they're actually going to be out at the shooting range because there's shooting competition on Good Friday, go figure. And so we'll probably celebrate Easter on the Saturday night, because that's when all of us will be home. But it's really important to have that time with family, and the kids know that I'm working that day and there's nothing we can do about it. Shift workers, all of the emergency services people out there, take my hat off to you. As usual, we work through these holidays and we just get on with it. And that's exactly what we do in our house. We just shift it to another day. And it doesn't matter that it's on that other day. It's more about having some time with each other. I'll probably cook a loaf of sourdough, even though, I may not. And if I don't, it won't be the end of the world. But I think the most important thing around Easter is making sure that you sit down with family and have some time with family, that you actually engage with them. Not everybody's sitting there like the zombie apocalypse with their phones in their face, which we've started to see creep back in here, and I've started to rein back on it and say, no, phones go down. It doesn't have to have matching table settings. It doesn't have to have the most perfect meal that's prepared and something that you're going to take photos of and post on Instagram and everybody's going to be jealous of your household. It doesn't have to have that. If you want to do that and it makes you feel good, go right at it, have at it. But if that's not you, don't stress. My nose has all of a sudden started running. For those that are watching on YouTube, I am really sorry. I keep rubbing my nose. I haven't been snorting anything, don't worry. There's a horrible flu going around at the moment, and I'm really, really mindful of not catching it. But I have so many antibiotics on board at the moment, I don't think I could catch anything. No self-respecting germ would live in my body. So the main thing I wanted to get across about takeaway is it's not about how much you spend at the supermarket and what you purchase for family. It's not about how pretty your dinner setting looks or how your table spreads out and how Insta-perfect it is, because sometimes the Insta-perfect lives behind the scenes are not so perfect. It is about, if you've got chooks, going and collecting your eggs, because then you can say, I got eggs on Easter. It's about making a nice meal to share with your family, but also sitting down and reflecting on the summer season that's just finished. And I think it really is, that's the big one, is sit down and work out whether or not summer was good for you and whether it worked for you and what didn't. And make some notes in your journal now, because by the time spring comes around, you will have forgotten what was good and what wasn't. So it's important to kind of take a bit of stock on that. And pat yourself on the back if you got through this summer season and you grew some veggies, you had a milking goat, you suddenly had chooks and you had heaps of eggs. Pat yourself on the back. You're a homesteader. You got there. Anyway, short one this week. That's it for me. Next week, I think we're talking about veggie gardens, maybe compost or cold. Might be talking about veggie gardening in the cold, which will be not much use to our Northern Hemisphere friends. But for us Southern Hemisphere people, what are we planting for winter? Because I know I've got a list. Hopefully you've got a list too. Anyway, that is it for me for this week. Have an awesome Easter. I hope you get downtime with your family. Shout out to anybody, doctors, nurses, ambos, fireys, police, all those people that are working over the Easter break and aren't able to necessarily spend all the time with their family. Keep up the good work. We appreciate it. And even those that don't act like they appreciate it, really do appreciate it. I have to go to the hospital every day for my IV antibiotic injections at the moment. And I will be taking some eggs in for the nurses that are working on Easter Friday, on Good Friday, because I feel bad for them having to work that day. But I'll be heading off to work myself anyway. But shout out to all of those people that are working through Easter. We do appreciate your efforts. And also I want to do a shout out. Anybody that is currently deployed into a war zone and not able to spend Easter with their family, if you've got somebody in your family that is deployed and not able to be there, just hug them extra tight when you see them next, because that's a big ask to be away all the time from your family, and particularly during those kind of holiday periods where most people want to have that get together. Anyway, enough soppy stuff from me. I will speak to you all again next week. Bye for now. Well, that's it for today's episode of Ditch the Store. If you're loving the journey to self-sufficiency, be sure to subscribe. You can also leave a review for us or share this episode with a friend who's ready to break up with their supermarket. If you've got questions or success stories, we'd love to hear about them on the socials. You can also find me at www.mojahomestead.net. Until next time, keep raising, growing and making. And remember, life's too short for store-bought eggs.